We are extremely happy to welcome you all to this webinar. It is important to know that over the last 6 months, we have been conducting these webinars every Friday at 6:30 p.m., featuring a leader and trying to understand what are the takeaways for us. More importantly, we have requested senior business leaders, leaders from social service, leaders from other walks of life to come here and share their views to ignite that spark in future leaders like most of you who are around the screen. A humble attempt like this started with 1 and now has reached 25, and I'm sure it will go on further. In the weeks to come and in the days to come, we would like to promise and also work very hard to bring in very, very distinguished leaders from diverse fields to help us learn how we can pick up certain lessons for our business, for our work, for our life, and various other interests that we might have. Today, October 8th, we have Mr. Peri Maheswer with us. He's a very, very distinguished, committed leader, and I'm going to introduce him a little later. Mr. Peri is going to talk about ethics in business, and it is a very, very interesting topic. But before that, it is appropriate that I tell you about the significance of today. October 8th, 2011, on this very day, the founder of ICFAI Group, Shri N.J. SSV, passed away all of a sudden. He left for heavenly abode, and it was very difficult for us to cope up with that loss. And even today, it is extremely difficult not only cope up with that loss, but also try and manage to fill in his large shoes. A leader of that magnitude will always be difficult to fill in. However, his vision, his leadership, his exemplary practices will continue to guide us in taking ICFAI Group to the next level. But we wanted to tell you that today it is 10 years to that loss. Also in the morning, earlier in the day, October 8th, we had a fantastic session, the 11th convocation for our ICFAI Foundation for Higher Education, our Hyderabad unit. We had the chairman, Professor D.P. Singh of UGC, who delivered the convocation address, and it was presided over by our Chancellor, Dr. C. Rangarajan. The event was extremely well conducted, and the students and parents who joined were extremely happy for having taken them through the hybrid convocation event for the first time that we have conducted. Also, in no less terms, I must tell you that ever since I have known Mr. Mahesh Peri, I have started admiring him for his integrity, character, and tenacity. His own practices, his own responses, reactions, the way he stood up for certain activities, I think all put together, he's become a huge icon and a lot of followers on social media and in real life about his responses, about his knowledge, about his perceptions and the takeaways that he shares, both in person as well as on social media. Sir, we are extremely delighted, both personally and professionally, to welcome you to this webinar. Namaste from ICFAI. I will take a moment to introduce the guest. Allow me a moment and I'll share my screen. So Mr. Peri Maheswer is going to talk about ethics in business is no longer an option. The format is roughly the first 30 minutes a talk to be delivered by the guest, that is Mr. Mahesh Peri, and the next 30 minutes or so, we will have Q&A moderated by my esteemed colleague, Professor R. Prasad, and myself. Mr. Mahesh Peri is a qualified chartered accountant, certified management accountant, and associate company secretary. He's a passionate entrepreneur. He started his career as an investment banker in SBI Capital Markets, and subsequently he moved to Outlook Group, where he headed it for 10 years over the 17-year tenure, and it was quite an iconic innings there. Mr. Mahesh believes that the demographic dividend that India is seeking can turn into a nightmare if the youth are not shown the right direction to maximize their capabilities. And therefore, Careers 360 is born. And this is born out of his deep understanding of student issues and the information gaps that need to be filled to help students take an informed career decision. I must also tell you that I'm sure majority of you would have followed up how he withstood several difficulties, many odds and court cases, and what has been read about in media, both in print, digital, as well as on TV, about how he has brought down a dubious institution is something which always remains fresh in our mind about his character and tenacity. With this brief introduction of a large personality that we have today, I now would not like to waste any more time and switch it back to the leader here. And I'll request him to start his talk so that we are all uh, going to listen to him and note down the takeaways. My request to you all, ladies and gentlemen, is to mute your mics and make sure that you listen to it very carefully and also allow others to listen with greater focus. So thank you all. And now I request Mr. Mahesh Peri to come in. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Sudhakar Garu, and thank you, Prasad Garu, for inviting me. It's been a long time since I made any talk to anyone, actually. For obvious reasons, I think the world is going through a difficult time, and it is, people are really worried about many things that are happening around them. I just felt that there are far bigger problems than a conversation with me. But I think slowly the world is coming back to normalcy. I'm hoping that we are away from the pandemic, and we need to start rebuilding our lives. And here I am again. I also thought of making a presentation. Initially, I started making a presentation because Sudhakar did tell me that a lot of people who come here make a presentation. And I realized that the more I try to get into a PPT format, it was so structured that I lose the point that I want to make, because all presentations typically, focus on a few words, a few deeds, a few graphs, a few data points, and that just kills the, for me personally, at least in this particular topic that I'm about to deliver, it just was killing the message that I wanted to send across, right? So I just thought that I'll take a few stories and start weaving things around, so that we all get to a point where we understand that ethics is not an option or a favor that we do to the society. It is a need so that you can survive and you can live a happy life moving forward. And the reason is simple, that, we all know, and when we talk of ethics, again, as I said, I did not make a presentation because it's quite simply what is unethical for me might be ethical for someone else. And for me, while I keep talking of ethics, it's not something about preaching and prophesizing about it. I'm a person with strong belief system, strong convictions, but at the same time, in my urge to survive, in my need to survive, many times I compromise. I fail myself many a time. I feel my belief systems many a time. I feel my convictions many a time, because the urge to survive always is the foremost thing that human beings are, not just human beings, any living being is prone to do. Having said that, I think all of us have drawn lines of what we will do and what we will not do, come what may. And that is whatever we call Lakshman Rekha, or the line that you draw which you will not cross, and those kind of things. And all of us have that. For some, that Lakshman Rekha is closer to your chest. For some, it is slightly distant. For some, it doesn't exist. Right. But in a certain sense, I think everyone has a Lakshman Rekha. It is just that even when I said it doesn't exist, it does exist for them in a very far away zone. Something which you and I might not, may not be comfortable, but it does exist for everyone is mad, right? So when such ethical lines are blurred, what is unethical for you may be normal for many, but we still have a period drawn, over a period drawn, that Lakshman Rekha that we will all, for example, a school teacher should not be your class teacher or tuition teacher. That's something that is unethical. We all call it unethical, right? That, when a school teacher herself or himself is also becoming a tuition teacher in the evening, we know that there is something unethical. Similarly, when in our own business, like we operate a career counseling platform called Career 360, and we know that a career counselor cannot be an agent, right? Or an equity analyst should not also be a equity trader too, right? These are all lines that what are the ethical lines. We say that these are the ethical lines, that there is a conflict of interest. When there is a conflict, you don't get into something which will become unethical in a certain sense. Many of these things now are legally barred too, right? But in a certain sense, when you actually look at this whole thing, you will realize that every time when we talk of ethics, there is something that is added to the persona of people or individuals or corporations when they're very ethical, that they're more courageous, they speak up, they stand up, they believe in what they do, and they don't, in a sense, the compromise levels that they indulge in is far lesser than what unethical people do. I'll give you a very small example, right? And many of these things I can only talk of myself at this point in time because I don't have inside view of many other things outside. But once in a while I'll throw in an example that we ourselves do. Recently, we do a ranking of universities, and recently a university came to us, and they seem to be very, very close to a cabinet minister. So they came to us and said, listen, that you're doing something wrong for us, against us, and so on and so forth. And they started bullying my team members. And normally these things don't come to me unless I think that I must take it in my own hand. So these guys started talking to my team members and started bullying them in terms of saying that we'll have you closed down, we'll file a case against you, and you whatnot. When it crossed a certain line, I took in. The advantage that I had on my side is that what we did was not in favor of someone or against someone. That gives you a broad conviction that, listen, I have not done anything wrong. If I'm found to be doing anything wrong, it is not malicious or not with an intent to mess up with someone. It is just that my data is wrong. Now, in this particular case, the data based on which we did the ranking was also from government sources for them and for their competing universities also. So at some point in time, I told my colleague Aishwarya that, listen, set up a call with them. I will step in and I will talk to them. When I got into a call, there were 4-5 people sitting on the other side, right from the top man to everyone around. And the initial 10-15 minutes was bullying, the threatening, talking of how they can file a case and drag me, and you name it, everything was up there. I heard them for 15 minutes and I told them that this is my data. If this data is wrong, I'll go and talk to the regulators, because they have given me this data. Based on this data, this is where you stand. NRF might rank you better, it doesn't bother me. And at some point in time, if you have to take me on, I'll also take you on in terms of talking to the regulators and government agencies to understand how you got a better rank than what you deserved. Now, the thing is that you can influence some functionaries, but when you can't influence someone, you don't need to knock on the doors to throw them out and make you do what someone else who's done wrongly also does, right? So here is this set of people who are trying to tell me that the government ranking is far better for them, and I must follow the government ranking. Whereas I told them that the government ranking itself is wrong, because the data that you submitted ensures that you don't deserve the ranking that you got. The moment I said that, everything went into a silent zone. They stepped back and they said, listen, Mr. Peri, we really respect you. And you name, all the stuff that normally these people in a compromising, state would start doing it. And at the end of it, they ended by the conversation by saying, with folded hands, we humbly request you to be our mentor. No, this happens when you actually have conviction and you've not done anything wrong. Now, assuming that I've done anything wrong, that I wouldn't have been able to take that stand. I would have said, I would have gone on to a call, compromised with them, given into whatever they wanted, given them a rank that they undeservedly wanted. So, and then I would have completely given up everything. Now, what happens is, whenever you start compromising by the millimeters or centimeters, ultimately it becomes a meter and kilometers also. The compromise never stops. It keeps going down and down and down. And for me, ethics always has been all encompassing. It's about transparency. It's about integrity. It's about trustworthiness. It's about loyalty. It's about equality. It's about compassion. It's about respect, lawfulness, providing excellence. You name everything: responsibility, upholding reputation, accountability. Ethics is not one single thing. Ethics is, like, a lot of people in India think that ethics is all about financial ethics. Financially, if you don't do anything wrong, you're all right. No, it is not that. A compassion is also needed. When one of your colleagues is being bullied, when you stand up for him, that is ethics. It is a need, right? Similarly, when you benefit a clean vendor against a not so clean vendor, it is ethics. Now, you may or may not take money. You may or may not be pressurized by these guys, but any of these things, when I say transparency, integrity, trust, all these things for me are a part of the entire ethics. And the thing that we must remember, when I said earlier that when you are ethical, you're not doing a favor to anyone, you're doing a favor to yourself. When you're when you're being ethical, you're not doing any service to the society. You're just ensuring that you don't suffer the consequences of your own action many years later. Because this generation and moving forward, we are leaving our digital footprints. Everything that you do today is transparent and would be uncovered if you do anything wrong much later. Maybe today you're not caught, but someday you will be caught. And when you're caught, you'll not be in your home, you'll be somewhere else. Warren Buffett beautifully said, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. right? And if you think about it, you'll do things differently. The moment you think that, let not my current 5 minutes of infamy mess up my 20 years of the reputation that I built, you start, behaving differently, thinking differently, and doing it different. And the thing that I always tell people, including students and corporate leaders, if and when I meet them, is that this delta or gap that we say that is personal, this is professional, it should not change or will not change as a character, right? If you're a corrupt guy in professional life, trust me that you'll also bribe your children to do things which they otherwise are supposed to be doing in personal life also, because that's a DNA that it keeps flowing in. If you beat up someone on the streets, you may also raise your hands, because raising a hand doesn't cause you any pain anymore, right? Beating up someone doesn't cause you pain. Their hand raises automatically and it slaps someone in front of. So this gap that we keep talking of, that what is being done personally is not necessarily to be associated professionally or vice versa, is completely wrong for me. What you are, the broad DNA and the broad character of how good you are, how much integrity you have, how much loyal you are, how much you are compassionate, how much you have empathy, respect, all these things, in my opinion, are still the same character that cannot be changed in professional life versus personal life. So for me, once you understand that 5 minutes of infamy can actually cause 20 years of your reputation to go down, the personal and professional life, normally you will be behaving similarly, and everything that you do today is going to be traced back to you even 20 years down the line or 30 years down the line. You'll realize that you don't want to do things which are not ethical. Now, a lot of people also confuse ethics and legality and all. For sure, ethics ensures compliance. Ethics ensures that whatever government laws and regulations, you're compliant. But that's just one part of it. Ethics is actually knowing the difference between what you have the right to do and what is the right thing to do. As long as you're clear about that, what is legal need not be what is ethical need not be, can still be legal, but you still don't want to do that. And that is very important. When you know that, the difference between what the rights that you have of whether you should do it or not, and whether you want to do it or not, because it's right or wrong, then you fall into a bracket which is called ethics. Now look at whatever happened, and two, at any point in time, you might be the owner of a company or a worker working in that company. If you follow any unethical act, it will devour you over a period of time. And again, as I said, the lines are blurred between ethics and legality, but there is a broad understanding of what ethics is and what legal is. And definitely anything which is illegal is definitely unethical. But what is unethical need not be illegal at this point in time. But the laws are moving in a direction where what is unethical is slowly becoming illegal. Two, what is unethical is also punishing your businesses if you continue to follow the practice. Look at the past few cases that you have, right? Because earlier I said compromises or unethical actions are habit formation. You compromise once, you compromise second time over because you say, oh, it's another compromise, it's okay, this is the last time. And third time you compromise, you say again, it's the last time. Then the degree of compromise also goes up. And you say, no, it's slightly more than what I did last time, but I would not do it ever again. But it keeps going on and on and on and becomes a habit. And the degree of that unethical practice also moves towards illegalities. Look at the big companies over the past 2 decades that have fallen apart. You talk of Enron, you talk of Satyam, you talk of Anil Ambani Group, you talk of B.R. Shetty, the Dubai guy who's now hiding in India. Each of these guys, they started with small, practices where they would hide some things beyond the books, put something in a special purpose vehicle and hide that whole thing, and keep certain things off the book so that things are going away. Look at Satyam. It's a clear case because I think you come from, all of you are mostly from Hyderabad, so you would know that. Satyam first started showing more profits. But the profits never existed. So they increased the fixed deposit or the deposit in the banks. To increase the deposit in the banks, the accountant would know, the auditor would know, and both of them agreed on it because the promoter said that. And as you kept increasing profits, year on year, the profits have to increase. So year on year, non-existing deposits increased. And because the auditor and the accountants and all these things were already, compliant or pliant in the first earlier years, they kept doing the same thing again and again. At the end of it, it is not just Ramlingaraju who was behind bars. All the auditors, all the accountants, all the company secretaries, all these people were behind bars. And that is a sad state of when you don't follow ethics. That, you can be a small level time employee in the company or a big one, but if you are part of that action, then you actually fall prey to that, and you actually have to pay the price for something that you are a part of. And that is very important, that whatever you're doing today is traceable, and two, you might be a small part of it or a big part of it, you'll still be caught. Now, once you realize that, you'll also not do anything which is wrong. Now, I understand that at this point in time, I'm talking, the lines between what is unethical and what is illegal is being blurred. But what they did then as unethical slowly becomes illegal also, right? I'm not talking of Satyam, but many of the actions that were done by many of the corporations which went down started with unethical practices, moving to illegal practices, moving to a default of the company. Look at B.R. Shetty. B.R. Shetty, initially B.R. Shetty is a person who was based in Dubai. He used to own a company called NMC Healthcare. The company operated about 194 medical facilities in Dubai, and 18 other countries, and employed about 2,000 plus doctors, about 20,000 plus healthcare workers. They started by slowly not disclosing their liabilities because they put it in special purpose vehicles. One fine day, one equity research company called Muddy Waters, they just announced that they're about to release a damning report on a Dubai-based company which is into healthcare. They didn't even name NMC Healthcare, by the way. And all hell broke loose because what Muddy Water said in its tweet was that they're about to announce how a healthcare company based out of Dubai was having more liabilities than what they were. And even the banks did not know that so many liabilities were there. The moment that happened, all the other banks started disclosing how much is owed to them by this NMC Healthcare. And when you added up all those things, they realized that about $4 billion worth of liabilities were not even reported in the balance sheet. Now, the interesting thing is this. The man, B.R. Shetty, who's an Indian settled in Dubai and now is in India, he started by slowly injecting this unethical practices, which became illegal practices. Now, even the CEO, CFO and all, it seems, have raised loans to benefit themselves, because when you're a part of a larger structure and when the top man is unethical and illegal and doing illegal acts, then everyone down below also will do that. You go to an organization where the peon is seeking money openly and brazenly, you can be sure that the top man also is corrupt, because otherwise the brazenness doesn't come in, right? So this is what happened. As you moved along, because B.R. Shetty himself was doing it, people below him were doing it. And by the way, today B.R. Shetty has appointed an audit team to investigate the frauds that were done by his CEO and CFO who were with him for the past many years to understand how much they have defrauded. But they couldn't have defrauded unless they knew that the boss will also not be able to point those things, because they keep doing this bidding of the boss many years of covering up liabilities, covering up losses, donating funds, and so on and so forth. So now there is a complicated myriad of cases which essentially are about the DNA of the company, where B.R. Shetty was unethical, he got into illegal acts, and teams below also started getting into that to benefit themselves. Now, once you know that, you realize that if you are an entrepreneur, if you're an owner of a company, you don't do anything wrong because you know that it will seep down. And when it seeps down, everyone in the system is unethical, and to that extent, the entire system gets corrupted, and that will cost the company its existence as you move along. So, and the other thing that I worry, whenever I earlier talked of ethics is, when we defined ethics and illegality, we said ethics is doing the right thing, right? But now we live in a world where doing the right thing is supposed to be a virtue. When did doing the right thing become a virtue? This is something that really, really bothers, because it's not a favor done to the society that you're walking in, you're stopping your vehicle when the red signal happens, right? It is not a favor that you do to the society when you actually do what you're supposed to be anyway doing. But that has become a virtue that's become heroic these days. So when you're very compliant to laws, you say, wow, this man is a great man. When you do the right thing in terms of compassion, empathy and all, you say this man is a great man. But I believe that it is now our responsibility to do what is right and normalize what, doing the right thing. That is a responsibility, because as long as we keep making virtue of someone telling the truth always, you're supposed to tell the truth always. Whenever you have a person who's told that who has got great compassion and empathy, you're supposed to be compassionate and have empathy if you're a human being. And these things are non-compromisable. Human values, compassion, empathy, not doing anything illegal, these are all normal things, and they should be normalized as you move along, right? So that is one thing for me. Now the other thing is, at some level, when you run an organization where your employees, your partners, your vendors, your shareholders, your stakeholders, and everyone in the system believe that you will not do any unethical thing, the value of the enterprise goes up, the customer loyalty goes up, the employee stickiness goes up, because they know that here is a clean place that they can work on. Otherwise, it's impossible almost these days to actually deal with a company where everything is ethical and everything is clean, everything is above board. So in a certain sense, for me, as you move along, ethics is needed for a corporation to survive. You actually look at the kind of companies that have closed down over the past many years, right? You just think through this and realize that one of the companies that closed down, which is through IBC process, is Diwan Housing, which is called DHFL, which lost about 40-50,000 crores for the country. Videocon Industries, SR Steel, Bhushan Power and Steel, Geetanjali, Nirav Modi, Yes Bank, Ruchi Soya, Sujana Industries. All these companies, you think, and you imagine yourself, think of a big corporation that closed down, a big corporation, let's not talk of the small SSIs and all the things. That's one part of it. We'll come to it later. But think of the big corporations that closed down or have died or have changed hands. There is one common streak that you will find, that the ethics in those corporations were of questionable mark. And when you have ethics being a questionable mark, there is no white knight that will come and try to save you. There is no customer loyalty that will ensure that you swim through the difficult times. There is no banker commitment to say that these guys are good guys, let me back them. Because the moment one thing is found, it starts falling like a pack of cards, and no one wants to be around you to support you also, because they know that if you fall, they'll also fall along with you. So they just get away from you. And every time when I look at a large corporation coming down, I realize that one of the massive reasons, and of course there would be some a very, very few companies that would have fallen apart because they did the business cycle has gone down. Like I say that for the airline industry, for example, right? But the large corporation that fell apart or changed management, you will notice one common thread, that they actually had unethical practices that at some point in time started biting them as they moved along. And the other thing is, globalization means that business strategy and business ethics cannot be separated from each other. The more you want to be global, your strategy must incorporate business ethics as a part of it. Look at Amazon, for example. Amazon is a large company, but in India, they're caught with their pants down because the legal fee, I'm told, is in such high that it is used to bribe people. Now, in India, it is normal, but Amazon, for US, it is a big no. And Amazon is fighting that case. And whenever you do, like recently, a few years back, some of you people in education would know, a particular university started fudging data for a global rank and got a global rank. In one of the global university rankings, they got a very good rank. Within 3 months, that ranking company had to, realize that there was a serious problem, because people, like I said, listen, this is impossible, right? And the next ranking that came out, that university was not even the top 300. It was ranked number 1 in India at one point in time. So now imagine the kind of fall that particular private university would have, because in 1 year they just shot up and next year they just vanished from the entire scene. It is much more dangerous for the existence of that university when they do that kind of a swing or volatility in their own ranking. And I also say this, every time when a business follows right ethics, it actually influences employee behavior. The cleaner the boss is, the cleaner the organization. In a place where the bottommost person is corrupt or willing to compromise, you can be reasonably sure that the top man is compromised any which ways. And as you move along, one, I talked of survival. 2, I talked of your own personal space where you cannot be alienated from a unethical or illegal practice that happens in an organization. The third thing you must remember is, business ethics always influences bottom line. It has a positive impact on bottom line. Like recently, there was a survey that was done in US where the world's most ethical companies outperformed the large cap index by 10.5%. That's a huge jump typically, because the large cap index would have grown by 12-15%. And here you have the most ethical companies growing that by 10.5% more. And not just that, in the same survey, 22% of the cases examined by the global study on occupational fraud and abuse realized that the cost to the company for each fraud that happened was $1 million plus. And companies that practice questionable ethics may also experience a decrease in stock price. So you look at, a lot of times you would realize, you'll realize that a stock price is very, very undervalued or overvalued, right? Now, but you go back into the system and try to understand why it happens, right? And you'll realize that companies which have very strong ethical practices have a very high price earning ratio or a high market cap as compared to companies which don't practice proper ethics. You look at it in the banking sector, you look at it in the infrastructure sector, you look at it in the power sector, you look at it in the real estate sector. All the real estate companies that fell apart had questionable ethical practices, and all the companies that still are surviving the real estate, slump also, you would realize that they have very good, tight ethical practices. And I'm talking of large corporations. I'm not talking of the smaller companies that might be around, because I don't know much about them. But I follow the listed companies. I do know that people who survived the slump are those guys who had a very clean balance sheet, and people who did not follow, who fell along with the slump had very, very questionable practices. It can be the Unitech or it can be JP Infra. All these guys were caught in the wrong acts at some point in time, and they just fell apart. One political swing from one political party to another party, it just vanishes. So this shortcut measures of corrupting the state to get something as benefit for yourself will fall apart, because 5 years, 10 years down the line, another government comes in and they start investigating this stuff, and you will not stand the test of time. Even a brand ambassador, by the way, in US, more than half the consumers have said that they will not buy a commodity or something from a company that they perceive to be unethical. Not just that, even a brand ambassador, if you have a wrong brand ambassador, you will completely, people will stop buying your goods. So ethics is very important. For example, after the ball tampering incident in Australian cricket, a Reuters report last week said that, that the Australian cricket team lost a major sponsor, and a host of large companies tore up branding deals with individual players. The report added that one fund manager cancelled its team naming rights deal, while Commonwealth Bank, which was always the sponsor for Australian cricketers, dropped players caught in the scandal. Asics, one of the footwear brands, dropped the sponsorship deal from David Warner. So one small act, which is the ball tampering that the Australians did in England, cost the entire Australian cricket team sponsorship deals, and many players, individual players, their sponsorship deals too. That is what ethical practices do to you. And as I keep saying that, whenever you follow ethics, it drives survival. It ensures that you survive, you sustain yourself even in difficult times, and it is a sure shot way of ring fencing yourself from from a possible viability or survivability question, because a lot of people come around you and support you when things are going bad for you. But for sure, an unethical business is not is not sustainable or viable over a longer period of time. And when I say longer period of time, take it as 20-25 years. Look at the big businesses that exist even today and were existent 100 years back, and look at those companies that came in, shot up, and then just fell apart. You'll realize one distinct thing, that the companies that survived over the last 100 years have been very, very ethical, and people who just shot up and that's just vanished have shot up because they were unethical, and they fell with equal force as they moved along. And as I keep saying, the first thing in ethics is compliance. You say you want to comply to legal versus illegal, or societal norms, or ensuring that whatever they do is benefits the society. These are large things that I have. You look at a company, for example, when you look at two companies, one with a higher market cap and one with a lower market cap, you know that the PE is differential, because someone is seen as more transparent and more, their accounting practices are very, very clean and the books are clean. And someone who is once caught with a wrong practice their stock price never shoots up. You look at the stock markets and you'll realize that. I think I've short off my time by about 10 minutes, so I'll stop here and I'll take questions if you can. Sudhakar?
Thank you, sir. That's a fantastic introduction to ethics. It is quite profound in one way, and it is also something what I call the anatomy of ethics. I think there are very important takeaways. I'll quickly summarize and then we move to Q&A. A lot of participants have today keyed in their questions at the time of registration, and even while the session is going on, as you have started explaining the ethics, I think many more questions have come in, but we'll try and see how we can handle those questions and how we can put forth those questions for you to respond. But the takeaways in the introductory talk, Mr. Peri, is very interesting. At least to me, it is so exciting that yes, there is some kind of clarity. You feel very happy, satisfied when you are helped with some clarity. That's what has happened today. Ethics, you're not doing any favor to anyone, not to the society. It is to yourself. It is needed, number one. Number two, you comply with certain existing norms, either legal or societal. I mean, it begins with compliance. But if it begins with compromise, where you would like to run away from your 5 minutes of infamy, you would actually fall into the deep well of trouble and greater infamy, or even sometimes you'll be jailed. But I think compromise is something, as you very rightly explained, from 1 millimeter, it will go to kilometers. So it's a slippery slope, and there is no end to the slippery slope. The third thing is, whatever you do wrong, it will come back and haunt you because it is caught in the digital footprints today, and it might come back and probably look at you harshly even after 20 years. So those traces will always be there. So the difference between doing the right things versus assuming that you have the right to do something probably defines very well what some of us are thinking about ethics. And also your exhortation that we need to normalize doing the right things is a pretty strong and profound advice. I think a lot of confusion is prevailing around people who are working in organizations who are quite learned otherwise in terms of professions of varied kinds, but there is no clarity. We all compromise. Actually speaking, we all compromise at various stages in life, and it is to further our own business interests or interests in life. At every stage, we have compromised. At least most of us have compromised. But then this crucible of ethics, or this anatomy of ethics that you have explained, is pretty good. Interestingly, initially, it looks like you are following or complying with law sometimes, in the sense that if you pick up some loopholes, then you are legal. But then if the law itself has become very active, then that will also be exposed, and it will not last for a longer time. I think there are several takeaways, and a cleaner boss will lead to cleaner employees. And that's again, another important and most profound and pertinent takeaway in the initial talk. Sir, I'm very thankful to the examples that you have given across industries, across large corporations, not just about financial standards, but even in terms of a very simple thing like a school teacher cannot be your tuition teacher in the evening. I think that tells it all. Thank you very much, sir. I think on this very interesting day, we have had a nice introduction from you on ethics, and now we will begin, with your permission, the Q&A session. Let me now bring in Professor R. Prasad. Professor R. Prasad is my esteemed colleague. He is the Director of Academic Wing. He is the architect of the newly launched online MBA program and is a professor and mentor there. Professor Prasad himself was an entrepreneur before getting into professional work or into ICFAI. All in all, he has about 30 years of work experience into academics and corporate life as well. He's an alumnus of IIT Bombay and IIM Calcutta, and here he is with you. Professor Prasad, welcome.
Thank you, Professor Sudhakar Rao. When we heard about this topic, it was something which seemed very broad, but I think you've brought a lot of clarity and focus in terms of what can actually be done. So to connect further, the two things that you've said, which I'd like to connect. The first is about ethics ensuring survival. And you mentioned the example of 100 years. And I remember our founder, I'd like to connect it. back to Mr. N.J. Yashasvi. About 2 years before he passed away, he had raised this question about, amongst all the senior members about how do you survive for 500 years as an institution, and what are the lessons to be taken away. And I think you've brought in one value which is very critical in that, and that is to be ethical. The other thing which connects very well is about compromises growing. And here I'm remembered of what Clayton Christensen said and did when he was doing his doctorals and research work in the UK. He was part of the sports team, and when they had to get into a final, he decided that he will not play because it was a Sunday, and he kept a vote to himself. And then his mates asked him, why can't you compromise one time? And then he made the same statement that if I compromise one time with a core value of mine, then this 99% will become 98%, and finally I'll be left at zero. So very, very practical and insightful points, both at personal as well as what can be translated into institutional, how it affects the profits. All these dimensions have been given in the overview. So what we have done is we have invited questions from the audience at the time of registration, and most of what we ask will be from there, so that we reflect their voice and are able to connect to them in terms of what they would like to understand from the session. We have aggregated it so that it is manageable, because otherwise there are hundreds of questions. So I'll start with the first cluster here. You have responded to some of the questions. Like there is a question like, why are ethics important? Why is proper business ethics important for any organization? You have responded to this. Of course, you can add to it if you would like to. There's another question here. Why are ethics compromised in business? So what could be the root reasons for that? So we would like to start with that.
I think that's survival instinct. See, many a time, again, I say, we are not being judgmental when we talk of ethics. We're just saying that there are certain things that you don't do in your real life also, right? And what do you call that? You call it ethics, or you call it norms, or you call it your own heart saying, I won't do something. Like, would you slap an old woman because she's done a wrong thing? You won't. No, you call it ethics or you call it norms, but you don't do that. That's because it hurts you, it pains you to be doing that thing, right? For me, ethics is something that you feel and say, I'm not going to do this because it harms someone. For me, the simple line that I draw when I talk of ethics is it that the benefit that accrues to me because of my act harms someone else? If it harms someone else, then it's unethical. If it doesn't harm someone, I can still take it, right? If there's a 100-rupee note on the street and there's no one around, I take it and keep it in the pocket. I don't go around to the police station and try to give it, or I'll maybe later donate it to someone else, but I'll at least put it in my pocket. But would I do a similar thing of, snatching a 100-rupee from a blind man because he hasn't seen it? That is wrong. No, it's not even illegal because no one has seen it. It becomes illegal when someone catches you. But till someone catches you, so for me, anything to do with ethics is that, we have to feel it. Now, why do businesses, compromise? That's because many a time we think that it's okay to do it. It's everyone does it, so why can't I do it? They've done it and they've survived, so we won't be caught. No, that's something that happens. And at it all starts at a very small level. As you keep moving up, it keeps, it keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. For example, I have this example of Unitech. See, whenever you follow ethics at the top-down level, it influences everyone, right? I always wonder, how do families and children of those families, where they know that the father is corrupt or the mother is corrupt, how do they behave in real life? And what is it that you're teaching your children? Would you want to earn more money, but in the process teach your child that you can be corrupt and you can squeeze money out of needy people? Would you want to do that? Today, if let's assume that I'm very, very corrupt, I would stop being corrupt because I don't want to pass it on to my child. Because the next generation, what today is unethical would be very illegal. And your child might be behind bars because he just imbibed that culture from you and continued doing that because he thought it was normal. But at some point in time, what was normal has become illegal. So these are broad things for me. But I think, yes, businesses do compromise on a daily basis. Every single day, we wake up with a compromise and sleep with a compromise. Having said that, that line that you draw of where you would compromise and where you will not should be very strict. Like, I can tell you that as career executive, we compromise every single day. What is the compromise that we make? When a university comes and tells us that, listen, we've started this course, can you please publish it? We publish it. When some university comes and tells me, can you talk to my vice chancellor and have an interview published? We may do it. But when a university comes and tells me, give me a very good rank, we don't do it because it impacts the student or influences the student. Now, that is a line that you draw, that when the moment an act of yours, which is a compromise, starts hurting the purpose for which you actually created the organization, that is where you draw the line. So tomorrow, if I might be interviewing a vice chancellor and he's telling me a lie, I'll let it pass, because it does, as long as I know that it's not influencing the child or affecting the child. Now, is it an unethical practice? It is unethical. Is it a compromise? It is a compromise. But I've drawn my lines of where I will not cross the line and where I'll cross the line.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that gives a lot of clarity to the discussion as well as to the question. And a few things that we'd like to connect it to. First is, I think you brought out the point that this is about a feeling. It's not just about what is written somewhere. It's also about a feeling. I think that's very important. And the response to organizations doing it, why they do it, I think this the top management and the owners, promoters doing it, or for in a family, the parents doing it, I think that gives something which can be practically very practically looked at.
If you look at Dr. Prasad, if you look at Unitech Group, the father created a fantastic enterprise, but somewhere he might have gotten used to how to deal, get into real estate deals. The children went aggressively behind, just followed the father, but went 100 times more aggressively because the father has taught them. Now the father, the mother, the family, the wife, everyone is behind bars. You don't want to see your 80-year-old father behind bars because of your actions. But the children, got this thing from possibly the father, because when they bought the land deals were structured, it had an unethical element inbuilt into the whole structure.
Thank you. I think that also points to culture building, which is coming up in another question. I also wanted to take out that point. I think you mentioned it earlier, that the quantum of compromises made and the relation of that with respect to your prime purpose is what decides what you end up doing and what you don't cross over. I think that's also a very important point. We come to the next question, and this next question is, basically it's connected to what businesses do. We see that loss-making companies are generally viewed as a burden to society by people, seen as misusing of scarce resources can be used better, inefficiency, liabilities. In many cases, there is a feeling that when you look at it, conventional ethics, it kills dreams and businesses, leads to alienation, forcing employees into economic insecurity. So it is unethical to make a loss. This kind of a base statement is there running around as a conditioning, and connected to what you said, it's okay to do because this is also there. So this, and along with cutthroat competition, focusing on profit and not social service, many startups also doing the same for revenue generation to attract investment. So what does ethics mean here, and where do we start the journey?
I think it must start with the B schools that teach students to begin with, right? This habit of jugaad that you so proudly teach your students. For me, what is jugaad? It starts with, and then you say, if you can sell a comb to a blind, bald man. So what does that mean? When when B schools were teaching it, when IIMs were teaching jugaad and proudly talking of jugaad culture that IIMs have built in, they were very proud of it, right? The same jugaad culture would make one of their own IIM candidates sell a Ponzi scheme to a set of vulnerable people. Now, he's done his sales job, professional, fantastic salesperson, but is it so? So I think this entire thing of, culture and all, we need to get away from this thing that, maximization of profit that is taught in these schools, the jugaad culture, or selling a comb to a bald man. These things, what was a fantastic thing 10 years back also, I would throw up at it today if it is taught to my children. So I think the learnings or the teaching that we have, and this is an evolving subject, mind you. What was ethical 10 years back is unethical today. I remember, when I was studying, to call someone a eunuch as a gali was normal. Today, you don't do that, right? In Hyderabadi culture, you call someone chakka 20 years back, 10 years back. Today, you try doing that. The way we would talk about our Northeast people, you try doing that. So it's an evolving thing, and I think the evolution is very, very good. Similarly, our teachings that we tell, what we tell our students of that, you are supposed to be a salesman and you should not be looking at anything but for your sales, or you are here for maximization of profit. Maximization of profit means exploitation of resources at times. Would you do that? So these are issues that I think we should make us children conscientious about, because ultimately it's their future. You and I would be dead 40 years from now. They will have to survive.
Thank you. I think the points that I can connect to here is that it needs to start. You already earlier mentioned that it starts with the founder, the promoter, and then how he influences people around you. Now you have added the teacher in terms of what the teacher is teaching as legitimate, and how that is found by students as also an influencer, just as much as you mentioned about parents. I think that's the takeaway, and that this needs to be understood in the current context, and we should not be looking at, as business schools, look at what was okay some time back and being very practical about it when we do our classes. I think these are the points that I was able to take away. The next question is about what could be considered as a foundation for ethical behavior. Is it only character, or is it character and surroundings? Is it being responsible, or is it being responsible and human? Yes, in a certain way you've touched on this, but I think some more can be added.
See, I think this surroundings part I mentioned earlier, but I think it's very important for us to deal with the surroundings part. For example, you join an unethical organization and start becoming unethical. Someday those unethical people will be behind bars. Would you also be behind bars? So this justification that I am so because everyone around me is so may not hold true over a longer period of time. It will hold true in a short time. It will hold true till you are not caught, but it doesn't hold true over a longer period of time. Like if you join an organization where at the top brass there is everything that is happening is not right, trust me that at some point in time you'll get caught. I personally, I'm a recruiter. I recruit about 100 people every single year. We don't recruit people from certain organizations where they've worked there for 5 years, because we know that those organizations have had that inbuilt culture. And I don't want to normalize that culture by taking that person here, because that same culture will seep into my system. So, for example, when we sell our products, we don't sell it on where it's funded by a loan, and the student doesn't even know that it's funded by a loan, because I know that the student thinks that he's having a transaction with me, but Bishme, there is an NBFC that came in to guarantee the loan. So there are certain things that you don't get into.
Thank you. I think what is being said is that as far as surroundings go, they matter because they can influence you negatively. And there's also this practical point that you can, right from when you're hiring to any other thing that you do, you can look at what the past is and what the surrounding is and make your choices accordingly, so that you don't get that culture into your culture.
No, not just that, Professor Prasad. Your ICFAI, right? You have marked your universities from where you'll recruit, right? Positively, which means it's a positive impact, that you want to take people from these kind of universities, and you have already named them in your mind, right? At the same time, you also have marked the kind of universities from where you would not recruit from. Both are there in your head, right?
Yeah.
It might not be in writing, but you know that, I want to, from this university, if someone comes in, I'll take it. It's there in your head, which means a person who's worked there has a positive influence on his employability as he moves along. And the reverse also is true.
Yes. So what influences negatively is one side of it, but there are also cultures where it gets influenced positively, and therefore value gets added.
Exactly.
The next question is about whether businesses can think about people over profit given the current conditions, and to what extent there is this aim of increasing the margins many times at the cost of stakeholders. And there is this again that momentum and drive, it's happening everywhere, so we need to happen, and growth is necessary. I mean, this is something that is there on the top of all businesses. Growth is necessary, and all this drives this dilution of ethics. Is that a sustainable model? What are your views on this?
I think the answer lies in your question. When you ask, is this sustainable? It means that you think that it's unsustainable, right?
Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, all of us have to differentiate between profitability and profiteering, right? Profitability is in essence of the business. When you're in business, You're in the business so that you can earn profits out of it. But profitability and profiteering cannot last. It's not sustainable. Try to make 70% margins from something. It cannot last. So I think that anything where there's an overemphasis on margins with no emphasis, for example, for sure you can in the short term increase your margins by reducing the quality of your inputs that go into making that commodity, that product. But then your sales fall over a period of time. You know that. So any good business has its eyes very firmly, not just on this week and this month and this quarter and this financial year, but much beyond that. And the reverse of that is when you actually have people coming in and going, they're not bothered about that because they want to show 1 quarter profits and all. You will actually see over a longer period of time the businesses themselves falling. And there are umpteen examples for that, of how quality affected sales and sales. You had high margins, but over a period of time, the sales fell dramatically.
I think you have touched upon it over a number of different points. And I think the single phrase which remains is this profiteering versus profitability. I think that's a very, very simple way of remembering this, of where is the line. Of course, you need profits in order to add value. And therefore, you need to also see that your strategy, which you are referring to as looking into the future and seeing how long this is sustainable and how you're going to reach there, I think your strategy needs to account for this. Thank you very much. I think we come to the end of this cluster. I hand it over to Professor Sudhakar Rao for the next cluster.
Thank you, Professor. Sir, it is getting very, very interesting now as we move to the next cluster. At one moment, I thought most of your responses are knocking off the questions I was about to ask you. But by the time you answered the 1 or 2 questions, then that fuzziness is still remaining. I'm trying to be honest. It's a difficult subject for me to even decipher and understand. But when you're explaining, it looks very easy. But when I look around certain responses from the participants of trying to take examples and situations and try and relate, there is a little bit of fuzziness and difficulty. But that's what we have requested you to help us in. So I will now begin with my first question. It might sound weird, but kindly bear with me. In India, people believe in getting things done than being actually honest. So big industrialists, some of them, they declare bankruptcy. They don't, or to avoid paying the bank loans, which is actually the public money. Under such circumstances, isn't the practice of business ethics heavily dependent on the wealthy people or people in power, regulators, and their decisions? How do we look at this?
Yeah, I think the moment you say powerful people, it includes the wealthy, the celebrities, the politicians, and the industries, or anyone that you want. And the powerful people also can be a fantastic activist whose voice is heard and has credibility, right? With all the power that all these people have, many of these industrialists are behind bars or have run away, right? And many of these guys have fallen, isn't it? Mr. Anil Ambani, the most powerful man at one point in time, is away from anything that you can think of, which is legal business, isn't it? Right? So, every time when we talk this language, we are actually, moving one brick only. There's a big wall out there. I understand that. We all know that. We cannot make anecdotally a bad example to be a good example by saying, listen, this man is a bad man, but he's now wealthy. The question then is, how sustainable is that wealth over a period of time? That's when you need to question that. For that, you just look back at all the 20 IBC cases, because you talked of insolvency. Look at the 20 insolvency cases. First, you will realize that it's their unethical practice that led them to insolvency. 2, you'll realize that because of insolvency, they had to give up their, companies that they really, really built. They might not have paid a bank, but there's an insolvency petition, which means that the banks can chase them, if not today, tomorrow or day after, or 10 years down the line, because that's what is provided in the Surface Act, right? So today he might escape. 5 years down the line, there will be another government or another regulator or another banking ombudsman who will chase them out. But one thing is clear, their life at peace is gone. There is no peace for them. They'll always have to sleep under terror that someday they might be behind bars. Because as you sit now, 25, 30, 40 industrialists are right now in Tihar and wherever they are. With all the power that they had, with all the money that they had, with all the influence that they had, they're behind bars. And one more thing, let me tell you, even the biggest industries, when he's falling down, there is no one around him. because people want to disassociate themselves from them. That's human nature.
Great. Thank you, sir. I think these are probably possible in the short term or in the short run. But eventually, taking those examples, I think most of them who have had unethical practices have collapsed and they remained lonely, and also they probably haven't slept peacefully. I think this is a very, very big takeaway. But it gives hope in terms of the fact that powerful people also mean activists with powerful voice as well as credibility. I think that gives us hope. And that's a fantastic point here. Thank you, sir. Moving to the next question. Again, if competition is unethical and buyers also do not understand that, and it happens, how do we differentiate and prove upon our standard on our ethical way of doing businesses? Any suggestion?
That's a very difficult thing, Sudhakar. I face that, you face that, everyone faces that, right? The thing is that at some point you need to believe that it'll all get exposed at some point in time. See, when you say unethical practice, let's assume for a moment, recently I was looking at an ad where someone claimed that 270 of the 760 IAS passouts have come from that institution. I was looking at the ad. It reminded me of the day when I saw the IIPM ad long back, where he said that I've placed my students 100% at 10 lakhs average salary. It's a blatant lie, right? Someday, that big enterprise will actually have to answer that, because some guy will take them on. It can be me, it can be someone else, but someone will take them on because it's a blatant lie. Now, what happens is when you have one such thing being taken on, everything that they created around that also or beyond that also starts being questioned, because all it takes is for you to question one single act of theirs which is wrong and prove it to be a lie. The moment you do that, the 90 other things that they've done rightfully also would be questioned. Now, in the meanwhile, to answer your question, I don't have answers of how does one deal with it. I deal with it every single day because there are claims being made by people, and to that extent my sales suffers and so on and so forth. But it's, you draw your own line to it and say, this is what I do and this is what I don't do, and live with it. Because what they're doing definitely is not sustainable over even 2 years, forget about 25 years. But do you have the stamina to withstand the 2 years? Would your survival be in question in those 2 years? These are questions which are very, very difficult questions.
Yes, sir. It is very difficult to differentiate yourself when your competition is actually doing unethical business, and there's no way to differentiate. Yes, but we need to put up this fight and continue the journey. And as you said, can you have the staying power for next 2 years? Is your survivability a question in itself? If you harp on ethics, I think that's a very, very pertinent takeaway here. One more interesting question is, we are talking about all these things. How do we ensure in professional life that these ethics or ethical practices in businesses are inculcated right from day one within organizations, say, for example? How is this done? How these ethics are to be followed?
No, I think we do that in our organization, where we actually have these town halls where we, are transparent, take questions, answer questions, talk about the philosophy of the company, talk about the mission of the company, talk about the vision of the company. So when you do that, people understand, first of all, what the company stands for, what the institution stands for. And then every time something which is against that philosophy is being done, because it's set from a public forum with everyone being there, it is challenged by a set of people saying कि सर ने ये बोला था ऐसे नहीं करने के लिए, अभी क्यों कर रहे हैं? And these things happen in the organization. Someone would say, अरे कर देंगे यार, and someone says, नहीं, sir said ऐसे नहीं करना चाहिए. For example, we say nothing at the cost of the child, right? Now, if something is happening where someone is publishing, for example, 3 days back, I saw a story in our own thing saying, some B school in Delhi has had an offer of 24 lakhs per annum as a placement, highest placement. I looked at it and I realized it's a Dubai-based company. It's international placement. International placement, 24 lakhs is 5 lakhs India placement, right? The moment I saw that, I questioned it. And then after that, 3-4 stories got vanished from the entire system, because, you see that. At times, someone else would question it. This time I saw it and I questioned it. Now, now that I questioned it, next time I'm absolutely sure that any placement story that comes into the system will go through the rigor of saying we'll not carry it unless it is verified by some set of people. So these are, top down you talk, top down you question, top down you also correct at times. All these three things you must be talking about that,
Yes.
doing that.
That's a great suggestion, sir. Transparent talks, your town halls that you conduct. And then it is like some of us, we put up a timetable on the notice board and we try and stick to the timetable.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If you don't stick to the timetable, the students will come and question, sir, why did you announce the class, but you don't start it on time as per schedule? Pretty good. So while we are still on the timetable in the school and running an institution kind of stuff, it is believed, or it is even seen, that at higher education level, at least when you start teaching ethics, the students feel you are preaching and get annoyed. They display a lot of disinterest. How to tackle this indifference, sir?
No, I think all of us, we're dealing with now communication, not about ethics, right? How do you communicate to a child as compared to a baby, as compared to a wise man, to a very intelligent man, right? And that communication skill anyway must be a part of our overall skill set. The kind of examples that you make of it with students, I would always make examples. I will take them through examples of a Satyam story, Anil Ambani story. When you do that, and also talk of suddenly how 25 people are behind bars and not just the promoter, it drives home the point. Like in the case of Anil Ambani, when the Reliance Telecom issue happened, all their officers were put behind bars. In the case of Satyam, all their officers and finance team were put behind bars, including auditors. And today, every officer who's even touched that pen or the paper is put behind bars, because that's how systems work. So one should be, many of the stuff that I'm saying we must do is not because you want to be clean and happy, and honest and all. Let's assume that within yourself you're not honest, but you don't have an option but to be honest. Otherwise, you'll be behind bars. Right? And what is unethical today is going to be soon be illegal.
Yes.
At one point in time, you were always told that don't, cut trees. It was a good practice not to cut trees, right? This is 10 years back. Today, you can't cut a tree unless you take the permission from the Wildlife Act, under the Wildlife Act. Otherwise, it's illegal act. Ek zamane mein, you would go and give 25 rupees to a clerk. Today, if someone takes a picture, you are behind bars. You can say, chai ke liye de rahe hain paise hum. But it's illegal, that's it. Accepting Diwali gifts today is illegal, Sudhakar. At one point in time, it was supposed to be a corporate thing that, you give Diwali gifts and someone takes Diwali gifts. But today, in many organizations, accepting Diwali gifts is illegal. So that's how you are.
Very, very practical kind of examples. So suggestion is that in business schools, if you want to teach ethics, I think it is the communication skill that has to actually dominate and pick up the art of convincing the students towards giving far more easier to understand kind of examples. Names like 25 people are behind the bars because of their unethical practices, so on and so forth, is a very good suggestion for all.
And not just that, also talk about the other side of it, that people who joined good organizations had a greater, career prospect moving forward, as compared to people who joined a Sahara, for example.
Right.
You can join a Sahara or you can join an HDFC Bank. Sahara you join for 8 lakhs, HDFC Bank you join for 6 lakhs. And look at the career path 3 years down the line. Draw it out for yourself. The 8 lakh guy would be searching for a 4 lakh job, and the 6 lakh guy is now sitting on a 15 lakh job. Fantastic,
sir. Fantastic. I think this is where clarity emerges as we keep discussing with you. But I want to switch this question to Professor Prasad, if he's willing to take this question. We have our Honorable Vice Chancellor also present on the screen. Our Registrar, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi, is also there. I want to welcome them. But I will continue with my question. Pardon me if this question is a bit weird. Professor Prasad, in our online MBA program, do we have anything about ethics and governance and things like that? And if so, how it is being dealt with in a different way based on our own experience of learning these, teaching these courses, also learning these courses in business schools ourselves?
The business ethics and corporate governance course is there. I think that is there in most MBAs. Now, what one needs to do is anything more than that. that you need to demonstrate in your delivery. So you have set a certain number of things. You have told that this is how it will be. So if you've got something, you need to stick to that, and you need to be able to explain to the other party that this is how it will be. So demonstrating what you are doing in action without compromising. So if you've got a certain assessment pattern, you need to stick to that assessment pattern. And as long as Mr. Peri said, if you're applying the same yardstick and that same yardstick is equal for everyone and that is fair, people will understand it. So I think whether you are pliable or not is understood by the students the way you deliver. It is understood very, very quickly. Students know whether the faculty is pliable or not, or whether the system is pliable or not. And as long as the system keeps that integrity, I think you're actually demonstrating ethics in practice. So teaching ethics is one thing. So that's one element of the answer. And second is, I think when you discuss all these stories, I mean, cases, as we call it, you need to repeatedly center it around ethics, in the sense that the story is always, because everything has that ethical base. And if you're able to center it around that and bring that element in, it may be only one point in a discussion. If you're able to bring that element in every time, I think the message goes through, even for people who came in with a different conditioning, who think that we are preaching to them. I think they will understand that, okay, maybe I am not changing, but these guys know what they're talking about. So these are the 2 points I'd like to mention.
Does it also depend on who is teaching that?
Absolutely. In fact, more than the institution, it is the teacher who's seen by the student. So if the teacher has anything there which sounds, pliable, then you have lost the story. Forget about what the institution says outside the classroom or on in its, in its website, etc. If the teacher is displaying ethical practices and sticks by that, the teacher has an image. The teacher is understood, and so is the reverse case. Absolutely, the teacher is right at the center. Whether it's an online class or whether it's a campus-based program, the teacher's ethics is extremely important.
Absolutely. I think teacher is a microcosm of the institution, and institution is a microcosm of the society. I think if we don't follow ourselves, the certain practices of dealing with different kinds of students bereft of any partiality, if we deliver what we promise, and if we stand up for certain inequities and some kind of injustices, then what the students will look up to us? Nothing. And therefore, there will be empty class in the ethics and governance kind of sessions. So we are being judged on all of the courses, and then when you come to this particular course, it will be blank if we have not delivered in all of the courses. So it's like, it is more functional in other courses, but here you have to sit on moral judgment. It will not work. I mean, that's my response. I hope I'm connecting it properly.
Absolutely.
Thanks for responding, Professor Prasad.
I think just like soft skills, ethics is also common amongst all courses. There's nothing very different.
Nothing very different. Yes. Fantastic. So thank you very much. And with this, I hand it over back to you, Professor Prasad, to start the next cluster.
Thank you, Professor Rao. I think, coming back to the story angle, I think one of the questions which has come up is that, we did discuss that it is difficult to stay on the right side always. And, the people who are considered ethical have far lesser deviations than the others. So there is a question about, can you name 2 business leaders in India, one male and one female, perhaps, who embodies this sort of almost their kind of thing?
See, I'm actually personally against any idealization, Dr. Prasad, because everyone has some good things, bad things, ugly things, right from the Mahatma downwards. But we do maintain our heroes in our life, right? But I do think that if you look at the female side of it, Dr. Anu Agha, Thermax, you must look at her story to understand. She's brilliant in everything she does. Her societal contribution, her commitment to certain value systems, these are right up there. On this side, I would go with Marico, the founder of Marico, who's really delivered the right things, the right messages, the right products at the right value without any compromise.
Thank you. I think, in a very short story, and for the audience to do its homework on both the names, I think you've given examples. The next question is again connected, to something that you said earlier, and you had opposed the IIPM thing And today, in edutech with big names, there are a lot of parents who sponsor education by taking loans. And edutech is big business, lots of investments, lots of startups, lots of unicorns. Is this a bubble? Is there something about ethics that you'd like to talk about here where there will be a correction?
I don't think, with the kind of demographics that we have, the business of education would always be, on the rise. Because there are more aspirational children who are moving up the ladder, more parents who want the children to be studying more and more and more to become employable and earn more. And the kind of upward mobility that we have of children who want to study more and more has only been increasing. And to that extent, India's infrastructure will find itself woefully short of what is needed. Now, all the not just tech, if you look at all the startups or most of the startups, I actually have a grouse against them, which I keep venting out with them when I meet them, is that ultimately what they created is an aggregation platform. Today, just to take an example, you take Byju's or Unacademy, basically they're aggregation platforms where the teacher moves to that platform and teaches on that platform, right? And maybe at a higher margin or maybe on a more structured way, whatever it is. I do hope it doesn't become a bubble, because if it becomes a bubble, it means that the children have suffered dramatically. And here we're dealing with careers and their futures and their aspirations. So unlike maybe if a commodity company goes down, it's okay. You bought a soap which is not good. Next time you won't buy the soap. But here it's slightly different. So I do hope that it is not a bubble. I do think that over a period of time, there'll be better practices that will be enforced upon them by the consumer, by the student, by the parent, and maybe by the regulators also, for all that I know. And that imposition would be good for the industry also, in my opinion, in certain sense. And it need not be by law. Again, I say that it can be by practice, right? The better the practice, the others will have to follow that. But at this point in time, yes, there is a bit of an overclaim, and that will have its own course correction. We need to give it some space and time to deal with that. It just started 1-2 years back, and and we all know that it takes 5-10 years for a certain kind of norms to become a law, right? So just give it some space and time, and I think it'll find its own median or mean.
Thank you very much. I think your conviction is coming across, and it's a very balanced conviction. We have more questions, but we are running short of time, so I'll hand it back to Professor Sudhakar Rao.
Yeah, it's unethical to put the difficulty on me alone. I still have about 40-50 questions, and you very nicely you say it's back to Sudhakar. So the Sudhakar will deal with the difficult things, but it's okay. Let me take it. I have 2 questions, sir.
Yeah.
We are already hitting at 8 p.m. 30 minutes beyond the time that I have sought for. So I'm requesting you to answer these 2 questions, and after that we'll close it.
I'll send you the bill. Professor Prasad, my bill to Sudhakar is 1 meal at Southern Mirchi or some such thing. Yeah, I'm not a very expensive person to, deal with.
Excellent.
that there's a joy sitting with you and eating along with you. So we'll definitely do that. And Professor Prasad will also join in that next time. Sir, the question from the viewer, from the participants, how can one find a median between our own ethic and that of the organization if there is a difference? Any practical suggestion?
No, that's what I'm saying. All of us draw a line and say we don't do anything beyond this, right? For example, if an organization says, convince him to get it, and it's okay, right? But when an organization says, lie to him, but get it, it's wrong, right? So, and in the matter of convincing, you would be saying certain things which might be claims or over claims and exaggerated claims. Again, there also there's a line that you draw, right? So I think all of us are wise enough or smart enough to understand what is right and what is wrong, and there is no definitive line any which ways. But one line that definitely is there is that when you know something is not true, you don't say that or you don't do that. That's simple.
when you know that something is not true, you will not actually toe the line.
Like in the case of IIPM, I very clearly remember the ad came in, and when I was fighting a battle, a lot of ads came from him and said, "Can you please carry the ads?" Because he was trying to, in a sense, please me by releasing those ads. And I said, "I will not carry the ads." He said, "Why?" I said, "In my magazine, there are various kinds of ads. Do I know that every ad is true? I don't know. But if I know that one of the ads is a lie, I'll not carry that." Now, the person whose ad I've not carried cannot ask me whether the other ads are true or whether I've verified that. No, I did not verify it. There are 50 ads in the magazine and all the 50 ads go. But when one of them is a lie and I know that it is a lie, I'll not carry that. That's as simple as that. It doesn't mean that everything that's coming in my magazine is true when it's an ad. I don't know that. I'm not a policing function. I don't have investigative powers to find out. But when I know something is a lie, it's a lie. Simple.
Great. I think that's a very, very definitive, very practical kind of suggestion that you're given. This connects us to what our founder taught us while making the advertisement. He said, whatever you write there should be true. And second, it should be believable. And third, what you don't write in the ad, but your sales teams or your admission teams, when they sit down in front of a parent and a student, do not run down the competition. It's a value.
I'll give you one more advice on this, Sudhakar sir. Don't sell a dream. Dreams are not meant to be sold.
Right.
So don't say that come here and your future is secure. Your future is taken care of. You still need to struggle after you pass out also. You need to slog your asses off every single day after you pass out also, right? What you do is you enable people to be facing the world competently, right? So I actually have a problem when people sell a dream. Right. It can be a TV ad also for all that, So when you say from a parent to a partner, you're not a partner, you're still a parent and you're still doing parenting. And many times you're still telling him how to read a Byju's class also, right? So you just need to be very cautious when you're dealing with this lot of people, because you're dealing with children and selling them a dream of how their future is likely to be if you were to follow that diktat. That's a very dangerous thing to get into.
Great. In fact, sir, this answers many other questions which we are not even raised. So it takes care of lots of questions raised by our participants. We need to draw a line, and also we need to stop being impractical and don't sell a dream. People will have to be enabled to deal with this world in a competent manner. I think that's what is the summary of what you said. Thank you very much. The last question that I have, sir, is you are a very bold writer and speaker. Probably you more often speak against the one who is in power, or the people who are in power. When they do something wrong, you speak against that. I mean, to be more appropriate. It probably comes from your strong ethical compass or some kind of support. It could be even legal support that you may have. How does a common man who is not so resourceful enough like you manage to do these things? What is your suggestion? How to continue our fight against something I deem wrong? How do we survive, for example, unethical organizations? This is partly covered in the earlier thing, but then this is the dilemma that we always have.
No, I think this entire thing, Sudhakar, a lot of people think that they can change the society when they become a politician, or they can change the society when they become rich. Earlier, you used the word powerful, right? Only powerful people can change the society. I think it's a ridiculous lie. I think all of us are influences in a small zone that we created around ourselves. In a family of 4, you ensure that you as one of the 4-member family only sides with the right thing and not the wrong thing. It is done. In a colony association, you stand up and talk the right thing and do the right thing. It is done. See, you have to be an influencer with the circle around you. Now, the circle around you might be 4 people, become 20 people, become 200 people, will become 2,000 people, and will become 2 million people as you move along. That comes from your, ethical compass. You cannot suddenly become, you're not doing the right thing with amongst 4 people, but try to do the right thing amongst 2 million people. That doesn't work that way. When you become ethical amongst 20 people, people notice you. Then you go towards the 200 people, where again people notice you. And then you go to the 2,000, then to 20,000, then to 2 lakh, then the 2 million. That's how this journey starts. So if you don't think that you will reach a destination without starting your journey, and starting the journey would start with the small circle of people that you are able to influence in an organization, in a colony, in a RWA, in a small clubhouse, whatever it is. But it starts from there. It doesn't, your destination of, influencing 200 million people will have to start with 20 people. And for that, you don't need to be a politician. You have to start right now. Look at people who are noticed, Sudhakar, around you. Why are people noticed? In your own organization, you would notice a person and say, I want to trust this man whenever I have an important job. Why do you do that? That's because you notice integrity and ethics in him. And you also notice along with that efficiency in him. You don't give your most important job to a corrupt guy within your system, right? Or a person who's slimy, or a person who's slippery. You don't do that, right? The most important, you'll keep giving him some jobs. A slippery guy will keep getting some jobs, but not the most important job that you have. And you're always on the lookout for a guy that you can trust, that you can give the most important job to. So the journey starts with 20 people, not with 20 million people or 200 million people.
Great. I think this is very, very strong. Each of us have our own zones of influence, and we need to begin there without worrying about the destination of, say, 2 lakh people being impacted or influenced. But I think we can start with, say, 20 people around us to influence. Believe in it, believe in yourself, and keep pushing it. And then you will be in the right direction. That's the takeaway, sir. Thank you very much for this session. It is so fulfilling in one way that we have asked several questions, sometimes overlapping questions, sometimes fuzzy questions, but these questions are real questions that we still have in our mind. And I think these discussions and conversations with somebody like you around us, I think have helped me and also helped various participants in probably drawing certain takeaways. Very important 2 takeaways before I close, sir. One is, if you do something right in your professional world, or if you do something wrong in your personal world, there is no way it can be clean in your professional world as well. Which means if a compromise continues, it becomes a habit, and habit one day will become illegal. I think with these profound takeaways, apart from the many other takeaways, I would like to thank you on behalf of ICFAI Group for sparing your valuable time with us, helping us understand this entire crucible of ethics, or the anatomy of ethics in itself, which I stated in the beginning. On behalf of our Vice Chancellor, Registrar, Professor Prasad, and everyone here, we would like to thank you once again, and we would like to call upon you with some questions which are unanswered. I'll write to you and probably take your time whenever it's possible.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And we are now closing this week with so many insights and with such wonderful, healthy conversation that we have had with you. As usual, you've been very impactful. As usual, you have been simple, very, very sharp. And as usual, you kept us thinking. I think this session is a blockbuster session. The 25th webinar that we are having with you has been wonderful for us. Thank you so much for making it so good.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next time, Friday, 6:30 p.m. on October 15th. October 15th could be a festival, but we are having our 26th webinar, and we will see how many of you join. This webinar is going to be about leadership, and it is going to be dealt with by someone who started cycling. So leadership lessons from cycling is something which we are going to talk about next Friday, October 15th. So see you all at 6:30 p.m. on Friday, and thank you for staying with us for all these webinars. And I hope you will lend your support and participation in the webinars and the weeks to come. So Professor Prasad, thank you. And I would also like to thank Vice Chancellor and Registrar and all the members, all of the participants who have sent these questions and made this a wonderful conversation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor.
Good evening.